Welcome back to the Empowered Educator. And I am so excited to see you once again this week. Hopefully, you've had an amazing week. It's been busy, busy, busy for me. We just got done with Labor Day holiday last weekend, and I feel like those short weeks seems so much longer. I don't know if you feel that. I know I was putting 5 days of work into four. And even on Tuesday, when we got back in the building, we had this like aura in the building of everyone was tired. So I don't know if everyone really took advantage of their 3 day weekend or if that Monday off kind of threw them off. But I had teachers that were kind of just going through the emotions. And at one point, I even felt it myself. So I don't know. I love the 3 day weekends, but sometimes they can definitely throw us off. And if you haven't heard, we're about to have a full moon as I'm recording this, and that made things wild too. We had some disciplined things on the campus this week that were just out of control. But those are the things that happen. People just making some bad decisions, right? Not making them a bad person, but just some bad decisions. But nonetheless, I'm still alive. I'm recording this on Saturday, September 6th, and the Cougars are getting ready to play this evening. They're playing Rice, so it's kind of a inner city duel, I guess you could say. But we're hoping when the Cougars went into the Big 12, we thought, uh-oh, it's coming, and it came, I promise you, if you're follow football at all. But we're hoping this year is going to be our year to get back on track. And then, of course, we have basketball to look forward to in the spring or in the winter, I guess to say. However, saying all of that, we're back. We're ready to talk about this week's topic. And one thing that I noticed, both growing up, well, in all aspects of my life, growing up, then as I was a teacher, and then even when I started doing the turnarounds that I did as a principal, I started to see this common thread. And as a kid, I remember my life was so out of control in my home. I felt like I never knew what was going to happen, right? For many, many years, my parents, they were young when they had me and they were still growing up, and nothing as a dig on them, but we went through some challenging times. And we've had alcohol abuse, we've had mental health issues, lots of things go on, right? Divorce, a new step parent come into the play, another new, just a lot. And that just causes turmoil. It just causes things to be change, and they change fast. And some people handle that kind of change well, and sometimes people don't. And so I got very controlling as a kid. My sister acted out. My brother had other kinds of uh, problems the way he dealt with it. But for me, I just became very controlling. I wanted to control my schedule. I wanted to control my grades. I wanted to control what happened after high school and how I got to college and all of the things. Of course, we know we can't control life, right? And I had to make a lot of pivots, but I just always reminded myself if I control what I'm controlling, what I can control, then I can make those pivots and I can still make things happen. And I did. And then when I got into the classroom, my first year was horrible. It was horrible. And I found myself trying to control so many factors. I wanted to control parents and how they were responding to their children's behaviors when they were at school. I wanted to control everything within the school day. I wanted to control my colleagues on my team. I just wanted to control everything. And when I realized that I couldn't control all those things, that the only thing I could control was myself, that's when I actually said, okay, well, let's step up and let's get this right. And I started to become a successful teacher. I learned those lessons. It happened within my own family with my ex-husband and I, and we're divorced now. So you learn these lessons, right? And once you learn them, you can walk into situations where you see these things happening because we're human and life is in patterns. When I walked into my very first turnaround school, I was the assistant principal, and the school completely fell apart that year. The principal that I was working with just did wreaked havoc on the school. The school was already in trouble prior, but it made it so much worse. And so going into the first year, I could see that all of the teachers wanted control. They wanted to control their classrooms. They wanted to control what they taught and how they taught it. And because I could have that experience of being there, I was able to negotiate with my superintendent. They placed me in this position to get the school out of trouble. So I had a little leverage. And I said, this is the way I want to do it. And I want to do it by allowing the teachers to feel like they have a little control. So that when they see that that doesn't work, they'll then realize that I can help them. And he agreed to it. I went to my second school, complete different state, complete different type of system because it was a different state. And I could see the school was in trouble, and then teachers were grabbing for control. So when I took on my third school, and this school was about to be taken over by the state, and we had to go through some very specific training through our region center and have an outside person come in and all the things. We had a conversation one day, and he and I were talking about how I know the staff feels they have to have some kind of control. They're out of control. They don't know how to handle it. And so we designed a system to start looking at the root cause of what was going on and be able to support the teachers in realizing that there were so many things that they were putting blame on, that they were seen as the reason for not progressing in an effort to try to control things that were uncontrollable. It's a slippery slope. Now, I'm going to ask you, as a teacher out there in the world, or former teacher, now you're the school leader, whoever, whatever role you fill, you've probably been there. And something happened to get you to realize you can't have control over everything. Am I right? And I only can say that from my heart because I've been there, done that twice, right? Recently, though, I've been hearing a lot of people over the last 5 years in particular, since we got back from COVID, and people are making decisions at the state levels, the district levels, as to how we're going to get our students back on track, losing that time and having a different situation. And now everybody has a different opinion on whether we implement technology or don't, or this, that, or the other. And I feel like it's causing us to spend more energy trying to control things that we can't control than actually focusing on the things that we can have control over and that we can buy into and really embrace so that we can actually continue to be successful. I even found myself last night, I got home, and again, I told you it was a rough week, and Fridays, I try to give myself, I do usually tutor, but because of a situation, I got home late and my mind was not in the space to be able to tutor because of a situation. So I sit on the couch and I have a glass of wine and I'm just trying to unwind. And I start to think, oh, this and this and this and this has to happen. And then I start to think, oh, but I don't have control over those things. And then I start to think, but then how do I get control over it? And I woke up this morning fresh. And I just thought to myself, girl, you can't control the things that are out of your control. So now you just have to figure out a way to implement things that you can control. And it just shifted my entire mindset. So even when I say I've learned the lesson, it's easy to fall back into those patterns. And it's easy to want to control things, especially when you're feeling like things have to change, that things are out of control, so to speak. So this week, I titled this episode, You Can't Control the District, but You Can Control What Happens in Your Room. And specifically, I wanted to talk about just that. Many of us are now in a situation where, and if you're not there, it's coming, where the state is mandating the types of packaged curricula that we're using. Now, I believe that there is power in having equity across grade levels, across districts. The schools that I have always worked in had a high mobility rate. And so, especially within the district, and if we weren't all on the same page, following the same scope and sequence, using the same materials, we were getting kids that were ahead of us, behind us, mostly behind us, just in all different kinds of places. And then the poor kid misses out on instruction, right? I also was listening to a podcast when I was doing my workout this morning, and they were talking about just the mere fact of sometimes you can give a state curriculum and say, we all have to do this work on the same level of rigor. But then when you dig down deeper into it, when teachers have some autonomy, they may be using materials that are too difficult, or some at the right level, or some lower level thinking involved. And then again, our kids are still going through the motions, but they're not necessarily prepared for the expectations of what they have to do to show their learning at the end of the year. But I also do think that with a scripted curriculum or a packaged curriculum, we also have a lot of pitfalls. We have to follow somebody else's schedule, somebody else's thoughts of what is best, whether they are designing this learning for a campus like ours or a classroom like ours or the ideal classroom, right? Because theory sounds real great sometimes, but the real world is a little bit different. And I also know that when you bring in these curriculums like this, the people above you, district level, campus level administrators, etc., they don't want you off course. They don't want you off track. And these curriculums move fast. I felt like when we first embraced this last one after COVID, I felt for my teachers because there were so many materials that it could take them an entire school day to teach language arts, but they only had 90 minutes in which to do so. So there are a lot of things that could be stressors when it comes to this. But guess what? They're not controllable. And I remember a third grade teacher I had, and I'm not going to share her name on here because I haven't gotten permission to do so, but I have to say, she was one of my top teachers in all of the years as a principal. And she came to me, she had had experience in another district, and she came right before COVID. And she was part of my pilot team that we implemented this new curriculum after COVID. So we went to the trainings together. We sat down and had the mastermind, so to speak, conversations together. She was one of my leaders in the group, and people valued what she said. And I remember that our state entity had come around to the districts that were implementing the curriculum at the time to just see what was happening. And when they walked in her room, I was walking with two TEA people, and we walked to her room, and I could see how interested they were in what she was doing. And we walked back out, and they said, you know that she was a little bit off the script. And I said, I do. And they said, do you see a problem with that? And I said, honestly, I don't. And if you want to ding anybody, ding me, because I allowed her to do so. Because I also want to ask you, did you see that 100% of her students were engaged? And did you see that even though she was off, she was still implementing everything within? She was just adding a few things that students need because they were significantly behind. And if you look at her data, that was my lowest performing group coming in, and now they're the highest. And that's when they sat down with us as a district and said, clearly, we have to provide a little bit of autonomy. If one of the activities within this curriculum is needed in class A, but that activity is not needed in class B, but something different is, we have to allow our teachers to be able to have some of that autonomy to be able to do so. What we can't do is allow them to bring in their own reading materials, their own types of things. And we all agreed to that because I felt like that was a great compromise. My teacher was not able to control the district, the state, the curriculum company, but she was able to control something going on in her classroom while still following rules, but making it the best it could be for kids. I will tell you, after that, I had the conversation with her and told her how what she had been doing was going to change the trajectory of this. And her confidence level increased so much. She's now a specialist working toward an administrative certification, and she'll be a principal one day. It also gave the rest of my teachers some hope as to I don't have to just sit and read a script. Yes, I have to use these materials and I have to use them with fidelity. But if there is something that students get stuck on and I have to say, whoa, let's stop for a second and let's really work this out, I have the autonomy to do that. Now, I'm going to say something a little controversial. We also didn't advertise all of that we were doing to enhance and make it better. That was our business. We didn't want the curriculum company to feel like they were just awful because they weren't awful. We just had to have some leeway to make sure that our materials covered what was needed for our students. And we didn't want to draw a lot of attention to ourselves because what we did is we knew we were supporting our kids. And that was a year that we grew 3 grade levels when it come to our accountability scores. It was a year where our first graders, we had 80% of them reading on grade level right after COVID. Y'all, that was huge. So my lesson for this week, as you are thinking about all of the things that go on that affect your classroom, I want you to remember there are going to be some things that we don't like, period, but we don't have control over those. And if we try to keep fighting the things that we don't have a fight for, it's taking our energy and it's going to exhaust us. It's going to overwhelm us. It's going to stress us out. We're going to get frustrated. And then that's when good people quit. But instead, if we can reframe it to say, okay, I don't have a choice on this, but can I control this, this, and this? And those are the things I can do. It makes all of us feel like we have that autonomy, that we can be confident that we know what we're doing with our kids. And that ultimately, in the end, our kids improve and our kids show up and do the things they need to do because that's what it's about, right? Student success. All right, y'all, that's everything for this week. Hopefully it's a little something that will help you be the best that you can be, doing hard better. If you need a little more support, head over to the uncommonedu.com platform and get in on my little network. I'm telling you, professional development for $20 a month, you can't get that anywhere else. And there are some really amazing sessions in there. As a matter of fact, I'm working on a couple new ones this weekend so that you'll see even more. All right, have an amazing week, and I'll see y'all next week on Empowered Educator.